Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 17th of March 2022. These are the stories that we will be discussing during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the whole case of Islamophobia compared to what India is doing as far as the hijab ban is concerned. Whereas on the one hand, the United Nations adopts the resolution passed by Pakistan on Islamophobia. On the other hand, we see countries like India that continue to move towards a completely non-pluralistic attitude as far as their minorities are concerned. We have seen the hijab ban that was ruled by the Karnataka court, and of course now there are other states that are also demanding the same thing. For a Muslim population that is a minority in India, but one that has been following these regulations and these principles of hijab since decades, this comes as a huge surprise for those in India. Nevertheless, it doesn't come as a surprise for us in Pakistan, because this is the way the BJP government is moving forward. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the latest updates as far as the crisis in Ukraine are concerned. A lot of talks about positivity, also talks between the Ukrainian and the Russian side. The Ukrainian side also asking from the West for certain guarantees before they accept the conditionalities that have been put forward by Russia. Russia also optimistic, but at the same time we see what is happening in Ukraine as well. Where is all of this heading? This is going to be our second story of the day. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about an earthquake, a 7.4 magnitude earthquake that has hit Japan, the Fukushima region, at a depth of 60 kilometers just before midnight on Wednesday. A lot of people have been killed, 4 people. A small amount, nevertheless, we will hear of more estimates as time will come, and around 94 injured. This happened some 275 kilometers away in Tokyo, where also these tremors were seen and felt. And of course, we all know that Japan is on a certain belt where it has been experiencing such earthquakes, not since now, but since decades. Now, we'll then go over to Washington, where the United States and Iran are apparently nearer to a finalized deal, a new form of the JCPOA. This has also been confirmed by the American side that says, and I quote, "We are close to a possible deal, but we are not there yet. We do think the remaining issues can be bridged." Of course, this shows a lot of positivity as far as the US side is concerned, one side that has removed itself in the past from the JCPOA. And finally, we'll be talking about a father-daughter duo in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa that has made history by getting a PhD degree at the very same time. Dr. Masood Khan, assistant professor at the University of Peshawar's engineering department, and his daughter, Dr. Nadia Masood, were both awarded PhD degrees at the same time. Of course, it's a huge honor for both father and daughter. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns Islamophobia and the hijab ban in India, and how India is moving towards complete non-pluralistic attitude, something that is totally against the main principles of democracy. More in the following report.
Indian Muslims are in grave danger as Indian state machinery has become an instrument of oppression in the hands of Hindu extremists who have left no stone unturned to harass Muslims. Exhibiting blatant bias towards Muslims, an Indian court had upheld a ban on hijab in class in the southern state of Karnataka, governed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party. Chief Justice Ritu Awasthi of the Karnataka High Court said in a judgment that wearing of hijab by Muslim women does not form a part of essential religious practice. In contrast, students who had challenged the ban in court had been advocating that wearing the hijab is a fundamental right guaranteed under India's constitution and an essential practice of Islam. It is pertinent to mention here that a Karnataka college's decision in January to bar entry to Muslim girls wearing the hijab had sparked protests. Terming it a violation of fundamental rights, the Foreign Office observed that the decision manifestly failed to uphold the principle of freedom to religious practices and impinges on the human rights. Signaling alarming rise in Islamophobia, Indian cinemas echoed with murderous anti-Muslim chants as propaganda films aimed at fostering prejudice against Muslims. The Kashmir Files screened. The relentless anti-Muslim campaign in Modi's India exhibits snowballing, dehumanization, stigmatization and discrimination against Muslims.
Muneeb Qadir, who is an analyst, joins us online to talk about this. Muneeb, thank you very much to have joined us. And in the studios, we've been joined by Khurram Ilahi. He's a lecturer at PIDE. Thank you very much, Khurram, to have joined us as well. We'll begin with Muneeb. Muneeb, thank you to have joined us. When you look at this hijab ban that has been enforced by the Karnataka court, and now other states demanding exactly the same, plus you have the Hindu hardliners that are forcing different states to enforce this law. How do you see this in the whole context of the way India is moving towards an all-pluralistic society and nation?
I always find it very troubling whenever there's a majority population which says that it is threatened by a minority community or their minority communities. And again, what I find very perplexing is the fact that there is a court, a judicial bench, where there is not a single Muslim on that bench, and they have decided that hijab is not an essential part of the Muslim or the Islamic faith. Do they have the lived experiences of being a Muslim woman? Do they have the lived experiences of being a Muslim in a Hindu majority country? So how exactly can they speak on behalf of Muslims and on behalf of Muslim student girls as to whether they should or they should not be allowed to wear the hijab or headscarf on campus or at school? That is very problematic. What I find very problematic is that when you start policing what women should be wearing or what they should not be wearing, because I think they should be the ones who get to decide so. These people say that why are you then joining a school? When you know that they have a certain uniform policy or they have a certain code of conduct, you are by necessary implication accepting to that particular policy that the school or the state law has set. But I don't understand. I really don't understand how a headscarf can interfere in someone's access to education, because we are trying to prepare students to be able to enter the real world in school. Isn't that what we are preparing them for? So when you're going to enter the real world, you will find all kinds of people, those wearing a headscarf, those not wearing a headscarf. What kind of schooling or education system is this where you're saying that we are going to be otherizing, we are going to have an apartheid in place against girls, against Muslim girls who choose to wear the hijab? Stop policing women and their bodies.
All right. Muneeb, kindly stay online. We'll go to our guest who's in the studio, Khurram Ilahi. Khurram, when you look at the number of MPs that are there in the Indian Parliament, there are around 27 Muslim MPs, but none of those belong to the BJP. When you also look at the attitude that the BJP is moving forward with, since the first time Narendra Modi came into power, we see a continuous spate of anti-Hindu measures that have been, pro-Hindu and anti-Muslim, anti-Sikh, anti-Christian measures that have been taken over these years. Especially the Muslim population has been targeted, whether it be in the Indian Valley of Indian legally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, or whether it be all within India. This hijab ban, do you feel, is a continuation of those measures?
Okay, as the brother has also already covered this point, so let me get to some of the philosophical side.
All right.
First, because the verdict has been given by the court, not by the government. So it's very strange to see that Indian state has formally, taken a shift. A great paradigm shift is coming, where you're only secular until you're Hindu. So that's the rule number one of the modern India, which we're looking at. And Modi is preparing up to be the avatar, and there are numerous writers who are writing about it. He's growing up his beard, and they're putting up huge statues. I mean, it should not, the burqa ban never came as a shock to me. They're already transforming into an avatar Hindu modern world with huge statues, and Hinduism is praised and preserved in its all forms.
But Hinduism could be praised in all its forms, but not at the pretext of putting aside or pressurizing all the other sects that are present there, the religions.
This is where I am coming. I mean, if any scholar comes at my home, I always show them, I give them a view of Bhagavad Gita, which lies at a Muslim home. But let's go to the philosophical side. Like, why I can't cover my face? That's the principal question, because this ban came later. But there are more secular countries like Belgium and Switzerland who already banned the burqa. So why I can't cover my face? Tomorrow you might push me that I can't even cover my chest. So you're heading towards such a fascist thought where absence cannot be present. And this is where we disagree philosophically. So because I'm here with some philosophical thoughts on it, in Islam or in the modern world or in the world of philosophy, absent is usually present. And this is from where Plato started. This particular positivist thought that only those things which are visible can only be preserved, nurtured and praised are so illogical. It's such a fascist thought that I cannot exist if I'm not particularly available to your eyes. This is where whole system goes wrong. I mean, tomorrow the Belgium or the Swiss society is not, or it considers that if I'm covering my face, so I'm under oppression. So what about the history? I can't see the history. I can't see the future. I can't see the Mars. I can't see the black holes. And it's the same question. When I take burqa as a point of inquiry or I take black hole as a point of inquiry, that is the same question. Like, if you can't see me, how am I oppressed? So they prove that by covering my face, I'm not oppressed. But that's the strange thought. So far, and let me quote, the Muslim community is not going to the philosophical route like, why do you ban the burqa? Tomorrow you might ban my t-shirt even. Like, if you're becoming a primitive savage, I cannot be, because I come from a civilization of Ghalib, Mir, Bedal, Iqbal. You know, our way of living is quite much different the way you perceive. The strange part, the most secular and the ones who are not trying to be secular anymore, both are banning the burqa. So that leads us to one point, that is Islamophobia. That you don't have a trouble with veiling my face if I have COVID. You only have trouble when I veil my face and I declare myself as a Muslim. So it's a hate, it's kind of a hate junction where covering the face is only bad until I, raise up the flag of the Islam.
All right.
So
that's a very interesting perspective, and also a point that you've raised. Muneeb, when you talk of Islamophobia, and of course we all know the recent law that has been passed by the United Nations, a law that Pakistan has been advocating for, and of course Tuesday was also the day against Islamophobia that was celebrated across the world, including in Pakistan. When you look at all of this, when an organization such as UN is enforcing a law that does not give the right to people to be afraid of a religion, and in fact Islam is not a religion that needs to be, that makes people afraid of it. It's the perception that certain people are making about that religion. Do you feel also this hijab ban that has been enforced by the Karnataka court, and also this huge UN cry that it should be also enforced in other states, is an extension of that fear of that religion?
We'll vote in favor of the UN resolution, celebrating 15th of March as the day against Islamophobia. And so you're seeing a pattern, a systematic, pattern of systematic discrimination against Muslims under Modi's India. Now, here's the thing. The year is 2022. And we are still talking about what women should be wearing, what they should not be wearing, without listening to women themselves. And I find it utterly shameful when I come across such rulings, such judgments, saying that, the woman doesn't know for herself, what is meant to be in her best interests, whether wearing a headscarf or the hijab is meant to be in her best interests or not. So my question again is, which I raised previously as well, I am a teacher myself, and I get all kinds of students. And some of my students do wear the hijab. I'm talking about my female students. Some of them don't. None of that interferes in my work as an academic, as a teacher, and nothing comes in the way. If I were to have a Hindu student sitting in my class wearing a tilak on his forehead, even that wouldn't and shouldn't come in the way. That's the point. How can a majority population ever be under threat from the minority? And in this pattern of systematic discrimination, let me tell you, I've recently seen a film. It's online all over the place. It's a bumper hit at the Indian box office called The Kashmir Files. And that film has demonized and vilified Kashmiri Muslims. And not just Kashmiri Muslims, but Indian Muslims in such a damaging, harmful way. And the narrative is so dangerous. It doesn't only target Muslims, it also targets JNU teachers and professors and people like Arundhati Roy. They have actually, recreated scenes which are reminiscent of these human rights defenders like Arundhati Roy. The basic premise of that film is, I'm just trying to summarize here. The basic premise is that asking any tough question to the government is equal to terrorism. I don't understand how. How is it terrorism when academics, when professors at universities, they are telling their students to ask tough questions to the government peacefully, unarmed teachers, professors, authors, professionals when they are posing tough questions to the state or to the government, how is that the equivalent of terrorism? And at
That's a
the end
that's a
of this
very
film,
important and a very valid point, Muneeb, that you've taken. Khurram, has what is being propagated currently by the Indian government, and we've seen extension of that through the Karnataka court's decision, is not a form of extremism?
It is. And it is so important what Muneeb said, that it's so important to tell our youth, our audience right now, that it's not something which, triggered after 1947. In 1905 and 1907, Iqbal was the first elected member of the representative of Muslims living in Kashmir. Iqbal only fought election once. So in 1905, when there is no plan of having Pakistan, Kashmir, because Muneeb quoted that, Kashmir was still a point of concern for the global community because it was a Muslim region having its own spiritual values. And even, there are a few esoteric writers like Gurdjieff and Uspensky. They even have some sacred sites there. So it was always quite a place where all religions, were melting in Himalayas, etc. And Iqbal in I guess in Ramaghan-e-Hijaz, in the message of from the east, he wrote 11 to 14 poems, Mullah Zada Zegam Lolabi Kashmiri Ka Biaz, like notes of brave son in his diary for the Kashmiri youth. Now it's way behind Pakistan. So this particular terrorism or this fascism or extremism was in the air always, and why Islam came as a threat, because let me quote it philosophically, please, and without hurting anyone's. Hinduism is all about presence. Even its God, you have to turn and mold the God in a shape which I can see. And the only religion where God is in absence is where we come. And then this divides further into two schools of thought, which is positivism and interpretivism. So the Europe which transformed and developed itself is on a positivist school. Even Weber worked like he had to disenchant the universe. There is no magic, there is no religion, workplace has no spirituality, etc. Just work, 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 and turn things into productivity. So they moved on because of that thought. And again, we were not in the one of the finest philosophy which was suiting us, or the Greeks, which was interpretivism. Like for us, the rose is more in the absence. And in Islam, now this is very important for all the people who might get a chance to debate for burqa. To see something completely, you have to close your eyes rather than opening up your eyes. Because we believe that a complete scenario, a scene or a canvas is available in the absence, and eyes are a very weaker tool to see that. This was the debate where few of scholars of Pakistan, Muslim world, wanted to go and debate that it's about the basic premise, as Muneeb said. It's about the basic premise. How do you look at burqa? You look at it something like a veil. No. It is something really sacred, something really having a value for us. It's not an oppression at all. How it can be oppression? Right now I'm covering more than 90% of my body. Only my head is out. So I'm oppressed right now. So tomorrow you might even say me to prove liberal or secular or progressive, I might even have to wear shorts. It's so strange. And how my face is my greater representation. Can anyone tell me? I really would want to take you back. What if Stephen Hawking, he couldn't walk, so I can't say he's not progressive because he can't open up his eyes. I never heard him. I just heard him through a speech modulator. So it's so strange that how face becomes my only representation.
Perceptions are being made, Khurram, and that is what I'm trying to hint at that perceptions about the physicality of a being are being made in order to demarcate between who is on the right path and who isn't. And that is where a lot of questions arise. Muneeb, my last question to you is, in all of this scenario that you've also mentioned in the face of this Kashmir files, this film that is being backed by all the Hindu extremists possible in India and abroad, and of course it is getting huge accolades because it is portraying the Hindus as it should have been. We are seeing the so-called direct or indirect rise of the Hindutva ideology or philosophy that was propagated way back in the 1920s by the RSS and now has taken again roots in the Modi government. Where is India going? Do you feel India within a couple of months or years could no longer be called a secular state? What's your take? Or is maybe even now not anymore a secular state?
I just referred to the Kashmir Files, the film itself, which might on the face of it look like a harmless film. But that's the point. When I watched that, there's a particular scene, one of the characters says that Kashmir centuries ago was a Hindu majority place. And it was invaded by Muslims. And this is the speech that one of the characters makes. And another character is carrying an abrogate Article 370 placard. And the audience is meant to feel sympathetic towards that person's cause. The point is that, history is being redefined through books, through literature, through movies, through popular media. And when you're doing that, you are effectively changing your secular character. Now, secularism, why is that important? Because it is all about inclusivity. I remember when I was studying abroad in the same class, I had people who came from all faiths. I had people from India who were Hindus, and we all got along so well. There was mutual respect. They respected me as a Pakistani Muslim. And why can't these politicians and these leaders with their, dangerous political agenda like Narendra Modi understand something as basic as that? It is going to benefit your own country. If you are inclusive, I can speak for myself. I do not tolerate any kind of xenophobia. I do not tolerate any form of anti-Semitism. And who am I helping? I'm helping myself as an individual and my country as well when I'm doing that. We have to speak out against injustice. And so the India of today is very different from India of, let's just say, little less than a decade ago. That was about inclusivity. When I used to watch films in those times, they had a film, My Name is Khan, where, a female character says that I'm wearing hijab and this is part of who I am. This is part of my identity. And that film used to get screened. That was controversial too. In those times, the hardliners did not like it, but at least it could get screened. Today, you cannot come up with something like that. And my question is, if you are releasing Kashmir files, and I totally agree, Kashmiri Pandits suffered exactly how in such huge amounts Kashmiri Muslims have suffered. So this director who made Kashmir Files, please also make a sequel in which you highlight the Kanan Poshpara incident. Or are you trying to tell me that Kashmiri Muslims have always been the tyrants and the Kashmiri Pandits have always suffered? You are lying then. You have to take a balanced approach and you have to be respectful of everyone's grievances, Kashmiri Pandits and Kashmiri Muslims, because they are UN Security Council, resolutions. But UN Human Rights Council has come up with 2 reports in 2018, 2019, talking specifically about the way that Kashmiri Muslims have been at the receiving end of pellet guns, and even an 8-year-old child, Hiba Jan, she lost her eye. And this is just one child I'm talking about. The numbers and statistics are all there. The verdict is out. Muslims are being discriminated against there. And here I'm saying that I will not tolerate any form of hatred or intolerance against Pakistani minorities. So to my brothers and sisters in India, I say you also stand with your minorities. And we should all stand for all marginalized people and our minorities.
I totally agree with you, and thank you very much, Muneeb, to have joined us, because this is a very important statement on which we end this segment, because we need to stand up with all the minorities. In Pakistan, we do that. When something happens, the entire nation stands with our minorities. Unfortunately, this is not the case in India, but we in Pakistan stand with our Muslim brothers and our Sikh brothers and our Christian brothers and sisters in India and elsewhere, where they are being subjugated to such kind of pressure tactics and such a violent extremism. And also thank you very much in the studios, Khurram, Ilahi, to have joined us and to have given us a very different take, one that is rooted in our history, in our philosophy, and in our culture and traditions and religion, and to have made us understand that this whole event that is happening right now, unfolding within our eyes, is something that has been developing within the Hindu culture since some time, and it is only now gaining momentum or face because of a government that is backing it full time. Thank you very much, Khurram, Ilahi, to have joined us as well. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the latest happenings from Ukraine. As far as the crisis in Ukraine is concerned, we see the West on one side, we see Russia on the other. We also see neutral countries that want peace, that want a negotiated settlement, like China, like Pakistan, that have been talking about it, that have been talking to both the sides. In fact, both China and Pakistan have done that. And at the other hand, we also have this ray of hope, this ray of light in the form of negotiations between the Ukrainian side and the Russian side. There was one round of negotiations that was already done between the two sides. It didn't come to a logical conclusion. There is more talks. There are more talks that are going to happen between the two sides. Both sides have shown extremism, not positivity, and optimism, in fact, this is the right word, as far as the future of these talks is concerned. But on the other hand, Ukraine is asking for some guarantees from the West as far as accepting the conditionalities from the Russian side is concerned. Farah Naz, Dr. Farah Naz, Assistant Professor of NUST, joins us online. Farah, thank you very much to have joined us. Farah, how much impetus do you give to these talks, to these negotiations that are now going to happen between the two sides? Ukraine asks for certain, backing from the West, as far as certain guarantees from the West as far as it accepting these conditionalities from Russia is concerned. Do you feel that is going to happen?
Thank you, Omar, for bringing this question. Ukraine seems to be more concerned about when it comes to the Western consent to they're going to support Ukraine in all sort of circumstances, no matter what Russia do. So looks like that Ukraine has been badly, affected in whatever promises were made to the Ukraine in case the Russia invade. And now it is asking for some sort of assurance from America and the Western forces in particular, and the NATO, that what can you do for us in the future, where whatever you were promising to us, those promises have never been fulfilled. If it comes to the recent developments that is happening, I think it's a very positive gesture. And let's stay hopeful that something concrete come out of it, because Ukraine and President Zelensky has learned the lesson of not counting on the West for any sort of promises that they make to you regarding your peace, security, and stability. And what Ukraine has achieved in all of this, I think it's the people of Ukraine who were and who are badly affected in these circumstances, where the West is, and the NATO and all the EU countries, they are not able to reach out to the Ukrainians. So end of the day, it's the people of Ukraine who are important, and they need some assurances from the West now.
All right, Farah, when we see the quotes that have come from both the Ukrainian and Russian side, and I'll quote Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, who said negotiations were becoming more realistic, whereas the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, says proposals that were being discussed now were close to an agreement. Both sides seem optimistic, positive as far as some kind of a resolution or solution to this current crisis that is engulfing Ukraine is concerned. But the West, on the other hand, we see the US sending more weaponry, sending more arms-related aid to Ukraine, and we have other countries that are also helping Ukraine with that. Do you feel this is going to create an imbalance as far as the defense status of both these countries, especially Ukraine, is concerned? And do you feel even once there is a resolution between Russia and Ukraine that this imbalance will continue to stay put for some time?
I think the entire situation and the instability that is developing in the Ukrainian conflict, Russia stands on its stance that NATO expansion to the eastern side of its border will not be accepted. And it still stands on its own narrative that it had even before invading Ukraine. It's Ukraine, I think, who is in the losing edge, where after, losing all its territory, and after, most of its people who land there, who lost their land and their property and all whatever they had, and they moved from their place of origin, I think they are in the bad situation. And I was really pleased to see one thing, that Ukrainian president says that the Russian demands for ending the war were becoming more realistic. But the ending the war is only dependent on if NATO promises that it will not be including Ukraine into its alliances. But why now this entire discussion is coming up? It could have been done long ago when this conflict was
exactly,
escalating.
Farah. If you remember when the whole agitation began, even before this status of war could even start, there was only one point agenda that Russia had, and that Ukraine should not be made part of NATO. Wasn't that all that the West had to give an assurance to Russia about?
It's all what I can see from this entire conflict is that it's not the war between Ukraine and Russia. It's a war between the Western forces and Russia. And Ukraine, poor state, has become a target of the big power rivalries, where the recent biowarfare labs, I think it raised serious concerns about what the West was trying to do there, particularly America was trying to do there, and they still will be held responsible for their actions there. But why Ukraine, a country, such an important one in the entire European Union and in Europe, has paid such a huge price to it, and where still the Western forces, they are not giving one word solution to that. Okay, we will not include or expand NATO expansion towards the eastern border after losing much of the Ukrainian territory. Russia is still there on its own stance. It's not like that it's moving, like after acquiring and conquering various parts, it has moved from its stance. It has one point agenda, and it is very clear on what they want to achieve. But Ukraine become a tool in this entire game of power politics. Another thing that the Russian invasion has bring into limelight is the new war tools that these days, if we see the way the international politics is getting shaped and emerging and evolving, economic sanctions and probably attacks through proxies, this is becoming new goals and new tools to be played here. Propaganda wall, campaigning, cybersecurity, all these threats are emerging. And I was also, getting surprised to see that the UNHCR is also stating certain reports where it is highlighting that post-Ukrainian conflict, once when it ends for all, toxic narratives of refugees will be there for discussion. And this opens rooms for several security concerns that's going to be discussed in the times to come, where probably certain legislation will be required to be redone to run the system in the international system properly. So it's not a simple conflict. It is a very complex one where states can be misused by the powerful states for their own goals. Probably that is the reason that we can see a huge divide happening between Europe and the West, because people and states in Europe, they are becoming more concerned about what the West is trying to achieve of them and whether their security and integrity will remain intact in case if the West makes some promises to them and then move back from those promises and they do not reach out to help and support them. If I look at Ukraine at this stage, it looks like that back in time in the 1971 conflict, when the Pakistani troops were promised that the 7th Fleet is going to approach, and the troops kept waiting there, but the fleet never reached out. Same happened to the Ukrainian people and President Zelensky. Unfortunately, they were waiting for the help and support, the military help and support that they promised that in case if Russia invade, we would be there to help and support you. But nothing reached out to them. They kept waiting, and their people kept dying, and their people kept struggling with their lives, and nobody was there to help and support them. So in the future, looks like that these kind of narratives of that we will come and rescue you, we'll come and support you, we will take your war seriously if they invade you, but just stand with us. So I think these narratives are not going to work any further. And now states have to stick to their own opinion. That's why we can see neutrality in most of the European states now, that they don't want to get involved in any conflict because they are really at the verge of Third World War.
All right, let's hope really, Dr. Farah Naz, that things do not come to that extent, and that as the Russian side and as the Ukrainian side are both saying that some kind of negotiated process moves along the right direction and some kind of settlement comes between these sides that are in conflict, so that once and for all the region could, and finally the people of these areas could heave a sigh of relief and live in peace. But there are going to be long time repercussions, as you've just noted as well and told us and our audience as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Farah Naz, to have joined us, lecturer at NUST and assistant professor at NUST as well, to have given us a broad outlay of what is happening right now and what could happen in the future as far as this crisis is concerned. As far as Pakistan's stand is concerned, we have remained neutral and will continue to remain neutral. We want a peace and negotiated settlement. That has been highlighted by our Prime Minister and our Foreign Minister as well. And we've also sent aid to Ukraine in the form of 2 C-130 aircrafts very recently that was sent off by our Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. Let's come to our last 3 stories very quickly, ladies and gentlemen. The first, of course, is the earthquake, the 7.4 magnitude earthquake that shook East Japan. Dozens have been reported injured after the quake off the coast of Fukushima revived the memories, of course, of the devastating 2011 earthquake and tsunami. 4 people have been killed, 94 have been injured. Buildings were shaking, as you've seen in the parallel windows. And of course, we all know that the Fukushima region has already been devastated by the world's most powerful earthquake 11 years ago. And the tsunami that it generated destroyed the nuclear plant at Fukushima that triggered a meltdown. We hope for the safety of all the people concerned, and all we can say is we wish Japan all the very best as far as coming out of this situation is concerned. Let's come to our next story, and that is US-Iran JCPOA. Both sides are showing positivity and optimism as far as the future of the JCPOA is concerned. The latest statement that has come comes from the US side, the State Department spokesperson Ned Price, who recently said that we are close to a possible deal, but we are not here yet. And he said, and I quote unquote, we do think the remaining issues can be bridged. This was, of course, in a statement that was given on Wednesday. So, of course, we look forward to a very positive development as far as this renewed JCPOA is concerned. It will be excellent for the entire region, especially for Iran. And finally, the father-daughter duo in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa receives a PhD degree. Both of these individuals have received a PhD degree at the same time. They made history, of course, as the father and daughter to have received it at the same time from the university. Dr. Masood Khan, who is the assistant professor at the University of Peshawar's engineering department, he got a PhD degree in mechatronics. His daughter, Dr. Nadia Masood, was awarded a PhD degree in electrical engineering. Congratulations to the both of you. And as we've always said, there's no age to learn. We always keep on learning. We always keep on studying. And the day we end studying or learning is the day we become static, and that is where our downfall begins. We need to keep on learning and evolving ourselves as individuals and as persons, and of course, so that we can enlighten ourselves and those around us. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new segments and stories that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe and stay informed. Allah Hafiz.